Welcome back to the Retro Car Guy 530 channel. Today we're going to take a look at the VIOFO A119S version 2 GPS unit that you see in front of you. And I've installed this into my 2004 Chevrolet SSR, so stick around after the intro and we'll take a look at it. This A119S is actually version 2 of the camera. The prior version included a GPS mount for the windshield that had some problems maintaining power connectivity to the camera. So version 2 includes an updated GPS mount. I don't have that here for the review at the moment because it's on my windshield, but you can see on the back of the camera here where it connects in for the mounting, the power connectivity and GPS data exchange connectors were changed in version 2 so that the power is maintained from the power supply that is supplied to the GPS mount is actually where the power supply goes, and then the power goes into the camera through those connectors. So make sure you get version 2 of this camera, and if you buy any additional GPS mounts, make sure you get the same version 2 of the GPS mount to correspond to this one, because I don't believe they fully interchange or will operate correctly if they're not the correct version. So let's take a look at the front of the camera where we have the lens. You can move the lens up and down to adjust the field of view. You cannot move it from side to side. The A119 without the S, that model had the ability to move the camera from side to side. This one is only up and down, but I have found that the field of view on this being 135 degrees is plenty sufficient to get everything I have occurring in front of my vehicle. The polarizing filter that I purchased for this, because I have some reflective color coming from the dash area of my vehicle. I have a yellow vehicle and there's some interior trim that's yellow, and without this polarizing filter it's quite annoying. It doesn't fully eliminate it, but it does resolve the issue to a great extent. So that attaches to the camera in that manner, and that helps clear up the image quite a bit for clarity. Now with that, let's take a look at the camera from the user interface, and you'll see there's a 2-inch screen. I have added some felt padding here on my camera here to alleviate a noise problem that I was having with mine. I've read online a couple other people have had the same issue where the buttons here while driving the vehicle will start vibrating and making some noise, which are picked up by the microphone, or I could actually hear them while driving. So I ended up adding some felt to this camera on the buttons to stabilize the buttons, and that seems to have eliminated the noise for me, and I can still access everything. So we have a 2-inch screen. This USB connector right now is a way to power the camera while I have it here off the vehicle, but that's why that cable is here. So let's press the power button to refresh the screen. Now I'm going to speed up the video here to make it a little bit quicker to go through this. Upper left shows it's recording video. The blinking red dot is recording. Microphone is recording without the slash on it. This is the position within the current file. It's 2 minutes 32 seconds into the current file with a maximum of 3 based on the current configuration. 1080p at 60 frames per second. I have no GPS because I don't have the GPS unit connected to it at this point. And down on the lower right you can see the microSD image, so it's got a microSD card inserted, and then the date and time shown there. So refresh the screen here by pressing that power button again, and notice that it's gone on to the next file, so it's 20 seconds into that file. We'll navigate through the menu, so we'll press menu, but if we press it now, I actually take a photograph at this point, and so to make it go into the menu, we actually have to pause recording by pressing record, and then press menu, and notice it's blinking, showing it's not recording. And now we can go into the various menu configuration items. First one is resolution, and we select by the lower 3 buttons which menu item we go into, and here's the current resolution, 1920 by 1080p, 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and 1280 by 720, 120, 60, and 30 frames per second. Then we can go into loop recording. It will define the length of each loop recorded file, so maximum of 3 minutes at this point in time. You can turn it off where it's just one large file, but I have it set to 3 minutes. That seemed like a reasonable default. Now let's go to exposure, which I left at 0. Wide dynamic range is to enhance low light situations such as at night and in shadows at daylight, so I turned that on, which does seem to help. In parking mode, I've turned off because I don't have an appropriate power supply to supply power while the vehicle is parked. So I've turned that off, and some of the other settings are related to that. Time-lapse recording and motion detection, which I've turned off. GPS I have set to on, which I forgot to do after the last firmware upgrade, so please make sure you go in and turn on all the options, set all the options after a firmware upgrade, because I had video that wasn't getting GPS location data nor the proper date and time. Speed unit in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. The G sensor when an impact is detected, so I believe the default is middle sensitivity. There's lane departure warning and forward collision warning. I've turned those off on this because I haven't taken advantage, but I might do a review of that later on. The date stamp I do wish to have in the lower status of the video. GPS info, I wish to have all the info, both speed and the coordinates, so you'll see that in the recorded video. You can set it individually if you want, or you can have by selecting all info, both will show up, or turn it off. Camera model, I set that on so it does say A119S in the lower status line in the recorded video. I do wish it to by default record audio, so I've set that to on. The screensaver I've set to 1 minute. That's after the buttons have been pressed or after power up. It will turn off the screen after that amount of time. The LED, whether you want that on the record button to show up, have that on. The date and time. If you don't have a GPS mount, you need to set this manually to set the appropriate date and time for the camera to use. Time zone, I'm at GMT -7 because I'm in daylight savings time in the Pacific time zone. So I've set it to GMT -7. Language, I've selected English. Beep sound, when I press all the buttons, it beeps, so I know I'm hitting them. Frequency, I set it to 60 to reduce some flicker. It was at 50 by default. Image rotation, no, I left off. Whether you want to format the micro SD and the default setting. Now you want to go into the default setting after you've done a firmware update to make sure you set everything back to default so that any memory location change or value change is set to the initial default value. And here you can add a card number, which I have not done for this particular one. And there's a custom text string that I've set for SSR since I've installed in my Chevy SSR. And here is the firmware version of A119S. It was January 15th of 2018, version 2.4. Take a look at some video actually recorded by this camera. Here's some direct sunlight video. I've minimized the dash camera audio to let you hear me now. And as we go around this corner, you'll notice that there's some reflection from the interior trim that's been minimized by the polarizing filter installed. Daytime footage with the sun behind the vehicle. Clarity is good. Here's an overcast day example showing that the interior trim is noticeable in the recorded video. This is with the polarizing filter installed on the camera. I would strongly suggest anyone that does get this camera to purchase the polarizing filter to alleviate as much as possible the interior reflection that you see here. This is the center console fuse panel for 2004 Chevrolet SSR. I added a fuse to socket 29 about a year ago when I added my reverse camera. Since they're both low power draw, I also added the dash camera power source to that, so that add a fuse socket in 29. Then I ran under the carpet, through the door trim, up the A pillar, and then up to the center area by the center rear view mirror and to the dash camera. Would I recommend this camera to anyone looking for a dash camera? Yes, I would. The price point when I purchased it was about $119 US. The camera provides wonderful functionality. It does even provide some parking mode features and lane departure warning and forward collision warning features, which I'm not even taking advantage of. So at that price point, that's fairly good. The capabilities of the camera, such as storage capacity, it seems to support up to 128 gigabyte micro SD cards. I am using a 64 gigabyte SanDisk high endurance video recording micro SD on a regular basis, and that's at the 1080p 60 frames per second. The caution here is during firmware updates of the device, which can be done by downloading the firmware file from the manufacturer website and placing it on the micro SD card and putting that card into the slot. So at the root of the file system, you place the file, and then you power up the device with that particular micro SD card in there. The caution there is, when I was upgrading the firmware, is the max capacity of the micro SD was limited to 32 gigabytes. Reason being, it had to be a fat file system. At least the caution from the manufacturer was that it should be a fat file system, and that could be up to 32 gigabytes. So in the past, I purchased a 16 gigabyte Transcend micro SD card that I use for that particular purpose. I would recommend getting 8, 16 gigabyte, whatever the cheapest is, as long as it's supported by the camera. Put it in there, use that for upgrading the firmware files on the camera, and then use your regular storage micro SD for regular recording purposes. The power installation, as you saw on my 2004 Chevrolet SSR, I used the GPS mount on the windshield. The hardwiring kit that I got in the bundle that I purchased allows me to tap power from the switched ignition source on the center console, as you saw in the video earlier, and that's a great switched power supply for the camera's use. In my other vehicle, I do have a second GPS mount on a windshield in my 2006 Highlander Hybrid, and I use a power plug adapter to go to the USB connector. So with that, I can easily move this to the other vehicle, snap it onto the GPS mount, plug it into the power port, and I may go off on a day trip somewhere. That way I have the same camera being moved from car to car. That way I don't have to buy multiple cameras, because I can't try both of them at the same time, so just move the camera. So that's a wonderful option with this camera. And everything else I've used, it comes with plenty of like wire mounting clips and various clips for mounting the camera if you don't have the GPS mount on it. And they come with additional tape that in case you need to remove it or have your windshield replaced or move the camera, you have additional 3M double-sided tape to use for that, which is great. And as I mentioned earlier, the polarizing filter is probably a must-have, especially in the vehicle that I have. As you saw in the video from earlier, the yellow interior trim comes up into the video line of view, and without the polarizing filter, it's quite intense. So I would recommend getting this about $15 option to place that on the camera itself, and it just snaps on. So with that, hopefully I've given you enough information to make a valid choice about whether this camera will be the dash camera for you. If so, I appreciate your time, and please come back to the channel again to look for future reviews. Thanks for watching.
I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're visiting the channel for the first time, please subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Please follow at RetroCarGuy530 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care and have a great day.